The Supreme Court, in a landmark decision, has in effect struck down the Biden administration's Remain in America policy for illegals. This is really important because Biden has been allowing really hundreds of thousands of illegals per month to seep into the United States. And this was all part of a policy, a reversal of the Trump policy. The Trump policy was called the Migrant Protection Protocol, MPP. And Biden basically goes down with the MPP. In fact, he overruled the MPP, at least temporarily on day one, and then permanently overruled it shortly thereafter. And they have been, it's been an open door for illegals. Now, Texas and Missouri filed a lawsuit against this and basically said it's not fair for the federal government to violate immigration law and do this and then impose the burden of these illegals in terms of driver's licenses and health care and education on the states. And so this was a lawsuit that was filed, and a Trump appointee in Amarillo, Matt Kacsmaryk, agreed with Texas and Missouri. Struck down the Biden law and struck it down not just in Texas. I mean, this is part of the boldness of Kacsmaryk's decision. He goes, listen, we're talking about a federal law. So to strike it down here is to strike it down nationwide. So Biden has got to stop it. Now, of course, the Biden people panicked and they appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They lost again. The Fifth Circuit said, sorry, Kacsmaryk's right. And so Biden rushed to the Supreme Court and he says, well, I want an injunction that allows me to continue the policy while this matter is litigated. And the Supreme Court said, A, you're not getting the injunction, and B, you're not likely to prevail when it is litigated. So the Supreme Court is already telegraphing that Biden's policy is kind of a goner. Now, I went back and I read the Kacsmaryk legal opinion. It's kind of interesting to read these legal opinions. It's really a masterpiece of clear reasoning. I want to give you a sense of what this reasoning is like. Section 1225 of the United States Code is really clear about the matter. It basically says that if somebody comes to the border and wants to be admitted, it says that alien, quote, shall be detained to determine if they should be removed from the United States. They should be then asked to produce valid documentation. If they don't have valid documentation or if they misrepresent their identity, it says this alien will then be removed from the United States without any further consideration. If the alien says he wants to apply for asylum, quote, he shall be detained for further consideration of the application of asylum. Now, Kacsmaryk goes on to point out that the law doesn't say that the illegal may be allowed into the United States. It says that the illegal must be. If you're going to allow them in, the government must detain them and, in a sense, keep them under government supervision. Now, needless to say, this was not done. And not only was it not done, no reason was given for the violation of the law, for the flagrant ignoring of the U.S. Code. The Biden administration, the judge says, has, quote, not offered a single justification for suspending enrollments in the program during the period of review. So they're supposed to be reviewing it. They don't really review it. They just go temporary suspension, permanent suspension. The Trump policy is kaput. Now, it's one thing to say that Biden wants to reverse what Trump did, but what Trump did was consonant with the law. And so in trying to overrule Trump, what Biden was doing is getting away from the law. The point the judge makes, which I think is really interesting, is that in most cases, many cases, these illegals don't have claims of asylum that have any merit at all. They are trained and coached by left-wing lawyers to say, oh, yeah, I'm being persecuted in my country. They don't even know what that means. They're not being persecuted. Not to deny that they aren't hungry, not to deny that they aren't poor, but that is not a legitimate basis for claiming asylum. So the left-wing immigration attorneys know this, and so they advise these illegals to say the right words about asylum, knowing that when their actual case comes up, but they're not even planning to show up for that case. So the whole thing is a scam. It's a racket that the Biden people have been running, and Kacsmaryk is totally onto it. So what Kacsmaryk basically says is, listen, the the US government is entitled to a certain measure of deference. And by that he means that since the government, the executive branch, is the enforcer of the law, he says district courts must kind of give the government some room to be able to interpret the law and use the resources available to put it into effect. He goes, but, he says, if the government shows such flagrant disregard that they don't even care what the law says, they don't do any real review, they don't produce any real facts, they don't explain why it is absolutely necessary for them not just to let these illegals in at all, but then disperse them all over the United States, not even know where half of them are. He goes, this is not what the law says. And so basically Kacsmaryk comes down hard on these guys and says, enough is enough. Your law is essentially history. And the beautiful thing is the appellate court then agreed, and now the Supreme Court also agrees. By the way, all of this highlights the importance of the judiciary, because think about it. If the Republicans are lackadaisical about the kind of judges we put in, we don't bother to vet them or screen them, and the left is diligent about bringing in left-wing judges, I'm quite confident a left-wing judge would have been like, ha, 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 this is my team. We're going to let them play on the field pretty much the way they want. And so you have judges who pay little or no attention to the code, little or no attention to the Constitution. This is really lawlessness that is being imposed by people who have sort of legal uniforms. So you have a judge in robes. It's kind of like a cop. He's wearing a uniform, but he's not a real cop. He's actually a faker pretending to be a cop. We do have such people on the bench, and I'm happy to report that Matt Kacsmaryk is not one of them.